Okay, perfect. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the August edition. It really sucks having to follow Scott after that. So, oh, absolutely. So, just as normal, session is being recorded. We do upload them to our YouTube channels. So if you do miss any, you can go back and see the previous ones inside there. Okay. For those online, just keep yourself muted. Unless you have a question, then feel free to come off mute. So tonight, I'm going to go through in the news. Then we got Mr. O'Donovan coming up and taking us through PowerPages. And then we're going to have a bit of a community discussion as when to use what application and what solution. Okay. And then we'll just do a general Q&A at the end to see if there's any other questions that need to be asked. Okay. Any questions before we get going? Comments? No. Perfect. So, in the news. First one up, Dataverse actions are now available in preview. Okay, so what's great about this, in the past, you would usually have to build out a Power Automate flow in order to achieve this functionality. So additional steps that you would need to put in place. Now all you need to do, turn on the slider to enable Dataverse actions in PowerFX. Once that's done, you can add your Dataverse environment into your app, and then you'll see you can start typing out environments, and then you've got your actions that you can bring into it over there. So this is going to help speed things up. As I said, less steps that you've got to go through. Also another great one, cards for PowerApps is now generally available. And this has been something we've been waiting for a while now. So now you can go build out your cards, share them, get them up and running much quicker. Okay. I know this is one thing that's been, people have been waiting for a while. We're also bringing CoPilots to more users. So we're still limited to US tenants only. But in the past, you used to have rights within the Dataverse that you are working on. Because remember, part of the process is to go and create a table. Now, if you didn't have those permissions, you wouldn't have access to CoPilot. What it actually does now is it will pick up, hey, you don't have permissions in this environment. Do you want to go and build this in your own environment or create your own dev environment? So that way you can at least start getting that up. It can up developer environment, load everything up, and then you can start working from there. Okay, so this is just helping more people get access to it. We are also bringing CoPilot into your pipeline deployments in Power Platform. So now, while you're busy pushing through, you can see it's going to give you some context on what you should put into the notes and the summaries inside of that. I know that usually takes a lot of time, making sure you're articulating all the changes that you're going through. Now, CoPilot will be able to review what's inside there and give you suggested deployment notes inside. Okay. So this is going to help speed up that process, help people understand what's actually been done, and saving time. Usually you'll spend a lot of time trying to just figure out what you should be putting in there. No, that's interesting. Other one, and this is, I think, something we need to dive in a bit more detail. I know Michael has touched on this, but process mining is now generally available. Okay. We've had this in the platform for years. I'm glad to see that this is finally now possible for us to see. What's great about this is you can tell it your business problem, you can tell it the process, it will identify the bottlenecks for you, help you improve that. This is something that's really starting to pick up now. And the fact that it's GA is great news. You can start bringing it in more. Then also, for Kurika, updates to AI. First one. Create text with GPT, new action coming in, which is great. So you can summarize this email into 2 paragraphs. So you've got your statement, and then you've got the body of text. So now you've got an email coming in. You want to summarize it, understand what's going on in there. We've now got an action. I mean, you were able to do this manually in the past, but now the action just makes it so much simpler and quicker to do. We're also bringing in validation and augmentation of responses coming from GPT. Because, you know, we're saying whenever you're generating content with us, it needs to be reviewed. In the past, it was a challenge to get that done. Now we can just bring that into a start and wait for an approval, send through the text, and that way we can actually bring a person into that process of reviewing the stuff before it goes out. Yeah. We're also bringing in some additional fields, so we're extending the invoice processing with custom fields now. So you can bring in custom fields for the document extraction, which is quite nice to do. And then the last one, co-ownership of our models. Yeah, so now in the past, you could only share the model with others so that they could use it. Now you can give them permissions to actually update and work on that, build on that model with you. Okay, those were some of the things that I picked up. Anyone else got anything else that they've seen or that they want to raise? Okay, perfect. So with that, we're going to hop over to Michael. He's going to take us through PowerPages. Yes, please.
Testing, testing. Can the guys online hear me?
Yep.
Awesome, thank you. Check how cool this is. Look at me. Look at the slide. Look at me. Look at the slide. Can you see any difference? It's got green in it. I tried to dress up the slide to look exactly like me. Okay, next time, guys. Okay, so I've got 40 minutes. Check it. I've got 40 minutes to take you from zero to hero in PowerPages, which is quite a challenge. I'm not saying anything negative about you. I'm just saying it's quite a challenge to take you from zero to hero in 40 minutes, but we will try our best. You're not going to walk out of here a guru, let's be honest. But this is certainly designed for people that haven't worked with PowerPages before. You should have a good understanding of what it is and how to get going at the end of this session. My name is Michael O'Donovan. I'm a technical specialist at Microsoft. I work with PowerPages and PowerApps and Power Automate and Power Virtual Agent and Power BI and all the power things, right? Yeah. Okay, so just quick question for those online and in the room. When was PowerPages first introduced to the market? And I put PowerPages in quotes because it actually had other names. Just a guess, throw a name out. 2017. Okay, online, someone in the room said 1996. Online, anyone? (2021), 2016. So going through the archives, the first piece of content I found that referred to it was on the 7th of February 2010. So it's been around for 13 years. This is not something new. It's been around for 13 years. It first was a product called ADX Studio, which Microsoft acquired. Then it became Dynamics Portals. Then it became Dynamics 365 Portals. Then it became Power Portals, Power App Portals, Power Pages. But essentially, it's the same technology. It has evolved, definitely, certainly during that time, but the core is actually pretty much exactly as it was then. Nice little tip that you didn't know, hey? Now you all have learned something, you can go home. Okay, so this is what we're going to do today. We're going to just get a quick overview of PowerPages. We're going to create a site. We're going to work on pages. We're going to create a form and a list for claims, managing claims, and hopefully we'll look into permissions. If we've got time, which I doubt we do, we'll go into advanced customization using liquid templates, JavaScript, and Fetch XML, custom branding, multi-step form, web template, stippers, footers, headers, authentication, SSL, all that. We're probably not going to get to all that stuff. But that stuff you'll figure out yourself if you have the fundamental knowledge. Top 3 learning resources. Once again, besides the date that you first, it was first introduced to the market that you've learned, the only other 3 things that you have to remember from this session are these 3 resources. Number 1, in no particular order, go to YouTube and search for Pragmatic Works PowerPages. Okay, this guy over here has almost like an online course. It's about 8 videos. Watch them all, and you're good to go. It's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. Along with this one, on YouTube, just search for PowerPages Engineered Code. So there's about 200 PowerPage tip videos here. Tips and tricks on how to do
But
things.
you still need the power, no?
Tips and tricks on how to do things. Small, short little videos. How do I create cascading drop-downs? How do I take a list and make it look like a calendar? Because I want to have like a calendar where I can book time, that type of stuff. So there's loads of tips. I would definitely go and look at this as well. And then the final one, of course, the Microsoft documentation, right? So learn.microsoft.com/PowerPages. And in here are brilliant examples, little snippets of code, JavaScript, liquid XML, stuff that some kind of like advanced customizations that you might want to do to PowerPages. So those are the 3 things that you want to get going with on PowerPages. Okay, so what is PowerPages used for? So PowerPages, you can build internet-facing websites, which certainly can be used internally as well. Okay, cool. So I can build websites internally and externally using low code. Okay, so most of the stuff that you're going to do on it, you don't need to write code in order to create that website. However, this is not designed to be a brochureware website. This is not primarily a web content management tool. Okay, I know some people might kick me for saying this, but you wouldn't build, and I'm going to make it up, Ferrari.com, okay, using this technology. Okay, it's not a leader in web content management, editorial of website content, taking it through approval, viewing previous versions, doing comparisons. That's not what it is. There's other technologies like WordPress, etc., that are better suited to that. What this is designed for is data-driven interaction. So I need to fill in an online form. Online forms. I need to go and look at the status of what I filled in. I need to retrieve that record. I need to update that record. So stuff like B2B portals, like a procurement portal, or an organization needs to publish their tenders online and people need to go and apply for the tender or respond to the tender. Job applications, claims submitting. I submit a claim. I need to see where the status of the claim is. Does that kind of make sense? So a lot of it is about forms, filling in data, multi-step forms, single-step forms, viewing what I've previously submitted, editing it, see it where it is in the process. So most of it's going to be around data. Make sense? Okay, here's some examples. Here, support case management, log a ticket. Where's the ticket in the process? In fact, Dynamics 365, if you have Dynamics 365 customer service or case management, it has a PowerPages application, and that's the front end to case management, so I can go and log a ticket via a web portal. Okay, so what skills do you need? So you don't have to have these skills, but it helps a hell of a lot. Okay, especially when you get to advanced customizations. So if you're going to dive into PowerPages, you're going to get to understand, or you should understand, the dataverse, tables, relationships between tables. Where's my claims table? What columns do I need? Often what happens with PowerPages, cool, so I've got this website where someone goes and submits the claim, but then what happens to it? So I might have a corresponding internal Power App, perhaps, like a model-driven app that allows internal people to review the claim and update the status of the claim and decline the claim. So often, but not always, is like a pattern of a PowerPages kind of externally or for business partners, even internally, you can use it internally. But then, like for the select few, this model-driven app where you actually review what people have been submitting and update, etc. HTML, CSS skills is a super bonus, especially when you want to start totally customizing the branding and the way it looks and feels. The web templates or the page templates are based on Bootstrap 3.3. So if you want to start doing interesting stuff around, responsiveness, so it automatically works across all form factors, it will by default, but you might go and start customizing the HTML. Well, then you should probably know Bootstrap, because that's what's used in the HTML to make it responsive, components, etc. It's currently version 3.3. Later this year, it will support version 5 of Bootstrap as well, which is quite cool. JavaScript and jQuery is a bonus. There are some advanced customizations you need to make that actually aren't low code. Okay, they're JavaScript. And understanding JavaScript is useful, but you shouldn't have to write thousands of lines of it. And then the other one is the liquid language. The liquid language is like a server-side language, templating language that allows you to put logic into your application. I think it's used by Shopify. There's many organizations that use Liquid, so it's quite a well-known language, and so having access to that or knowledge of it is quite useful. We may or may not get into that today. Probably not. Okay, so that's it for the background. Should we dive in? Just by a show of hands, online and in the room, who has built sites with PowerPages? Anything? Okay, so just for those online, every single person in the room put up their hand. They can't see. Yeah, I talk nonsense now and again. Okay, one hand online. Okay, so not many. So cool. So the way you get started is you go to make.powerpages.com. Make.powerapps.com, make.powerautomate.com, make.powerpages.com. Got it. And when you get there in the top right, guess what? You can choose your environment where you want your PowerPages site. And so once you're in your environment where you want it, you hit Create Site.
I was honestly thinking you were going to say that it's going to say make PowerPage.
And so when you create your site, you start from a template. Okay, so there's a few starter layout templates. These are probably the ones you're generally actually going to use, to be honest. They don't have much to them. There's a few pages in them. They don't have much capability, but they've got some structure to the pages, and then you'll go and customize them. There is one here called Blank Site, which is basically just one page. So you could start with that one as well. There's some others that are pretty interesting. There's one around scheduling. So what this does is it allows you to schedule meetings with a financial advisor. Now you could think you could change this slightly to schedule meetings with a hairdresser or something else. But yeah, it's a pretty cool template. You can always preview them. As you can see, it's previewing brilliantly right now. And you can also preview what it'll look like on a mobile device, so you can see what it looks like when it's responsive. Yeah, happy days. Cool. I'm not going to choose that one. Application submission. So this is kind of like permits. So maybe I'm in the public sector and people need to apply for permits for fishing, buildings, these types of things. There's this one. And then this one's pretty cool. Program registration. This is the most complex of all of them. Don't start with this one. Okay, like this one just uses Liquid templates in the back end. It's like it's a lot of code that's in this one, but it's super funky. It looks very cool, and it allows you to put like classes online and have people come and register to take a class. Okay, and then you can, the class can only have 10 people, so then you're on a waiting list if you're 11. That type of stuff. So typically, you're probably not going to start with those, but they're pretty cool to look at how they're doing things. You're like, whoa, how are they doing that? Okay, let's go and check it out. And if you've got Dynamics 365 installed in the environment, then you'll get a whole bunch of other templates as well. Okay, like for case management. For procurement, there's a few others. But otherwise, generally, you'll just start with one of these. And then you'll choose it and you'll say, cool, create me my site, which I already did. So I chose one of the starting templates, and this is what you get by default. Looks like the Maker portal in PowerApps. And like just playing around, you'll start figuring out. It really isn't super complex. So on the left-hand side here, you'll see I'm in the pages section. I can go and add more pages just by clicking add page. And when I add a page, I'll choose from a structure, a template. You can also define your own structures of pages, like let's call it like your grid layout. Those are called custom layouts. I haven't done that. So I can just choose, this one over here. I give my page a name and I choose whether it should show in the navigation or not. If it shows in the navigation, essentially what that means is that you'll see it, when the site renders in your top nav or your left nav or whatever it might be, and that actually shows it over here. So here's my navigation, and what you'll see here is I've got multiple levels. So under pages heading, I've got some sub-pages, sub-page 1, sub-page 2, and for any page that you have, you can go and move it up and down, promote this, so it's at a higher level, change some page settings. Maybe I want to change the URL for the page, or the name, or the permissions. So you can define, who gets to see this page. Maybe if I'm signed in, then I get to see this page. If I'm not signed in, then I don't get to see this page. I can't apply for the job unless I've signed in. Okay, or only certain people can see this page because actually you want them to approve it through this user interface or whatever it might be. Okay, and then these other pages are those that are not listed to be shown in the navigation. So you can still get to them. It's just that they're not going to be rendered in the navigation. I'll quickly just run through a few other things. So if I want to change the branding of the site, there's some predefined themes that I can go and choose from. And I can just select it and it'll change. And I can change, a few colors associated with, I want to change all the headings to one color. I want to change all the background colors to one color. You can change the font. So essentially, this is like a CSS editor, if you want to call it that. And from here, I can go and change how this particular heading looks, and then wherever that heading is used, it's going to change. We're not going to get into detailed branding, but what you can also do is you can actually upload your own CSS style sheets. Okay, so instead of using this, you can upload your own CSS style sheet and just edit CSS in a traditional way instead of using this scenario over here, and essentially override the default CSS. Data we're going to come to in a second because we're going to need a claims table. That's the scenario that we're going to use. I do want to talk about a few other things in setup. By default, when you create a PowerPages site, it's not visible on the internet. Okay, it used to be. So it used to be when you created a PowerPages site, it was live. And then people were developing and playing and people were finding the site and whoa, like bad stuff happened. So the default is not that it's visible on the internet by default. It's private. In other words, you actually have to sign in order to access it. So that's pretty cool. There's some other settings I can go and change here. I'm not going to go through in full detail. Your GoLive checklist is actually pretty cool. It's a few helpful tips almost that you should probably do before you make it actually live. So stuff like there's these features around enabling content delivery networks to improve the performance of your web application or your website. Web application firewall to make it more secure. Put in a custom domain name, so it's www.contoso.com rather than the default URL that it generates for you. And then finally, you do want to make the site public at some point in time, otherwise no one will get to it. Okay, so it's this cool little checklist here. What's quite nice with PowerPages is because it's designed for this this data-driven scenario, often you do want people to actually sign in and identify themselves. So under here, you can go and set up, well, what identities are people allowed to use to sign in? So anything from Facebook, LinkedIn, Google, Twitter, Microsoft accounts, you can enable. Generally, the best practice here, just by the way, is to not enable any of those. Okay? The best practice is to enable Azure Active Directory B2C. And then you go to Azure Active Directory B2C, and in there, you enable LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter and all those things. So that's actually the best practice. So Azure AD B2C, let that take care of authentication. It also does support local identities. You'll see something called local sign-in. And basically what that means is I don't want people to come and log in with their existing identities. I want them to come here and create a username and password, and I'll manage their username and password. Okay. Depends on the scenario. I personally don't particularly like that because now I have to manage somebody else's username and password. What happens when they've lost their password? So you've got to make sure the password reset facility works, which there is. It will email them a new password, etc., etc. But you have to manage the usernames and passwords. So, it would be easier just to use one of those social identities. And of course, in quotes, of course, normal Azure Active Directory. So people can sign in with just traditional Azure Active Directory credentials. So for example, internal employees, if they access the portal, then they can sign in with Azure AD. They don't need to sign in with Facebook and LinkedIn and Google and all these other things. You with me so far? Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Okay. And it really is click, click, click type of configuration, sign in, off you go. One more, progressive web app. So what you can do is you can take this PowerPages site, you can enable it as a progressive web app, which basically means you can put it into Google Store, iStore, what's that thing called? iTunes, I don't know. What do you call the Apple Store? I don't know. I don't have an Apple device. Okay, but anyway, it can be in those stores, have a little logo, you can find it, you can install it onto your phone. Some of it can work offline. So you've got a mobile app. It's built as HTML. That's what it is. That's a progressive web app. So you don't have to do much. You just have to enable it, and there's a few settings you can go and do, and off you go. Happy days. Okay. Let's get going with the really exciting stuff. I think those are people saying that they're happy. So I can click Add Page and create a new page and choose it. But actually, you know what showed up yesterday in my environment is this little icon here. Have you seen this icon before? It's called CoPilot. It's everywhere. And the way I created this news page at the bottom is I said in here, please add me a news page. And I hit OK. I didn't put in please, actually. I'm just pretending to be kind. And then it created me a news page. If I want a claims form for people to submit claims, I just go into CoPilot here and I say, I would like a claims form. And it'll build a table for me, and it'll put the form together. I'm not going to show you that because you're not going to learn. Okay? All you're going to learn is how to use this thing. So I'm going to hide that. But I promise you that is there. I swear on my life. Okay. Anyway, so I'm a teacher. I'm a teacher. Okay, so I've got a news page here, which it created for me. Happy days. And in here, I can now go and add some stuff. So basically what happens in the page is you have sections. And I might want to add more sections. So you just go and you hover. Ooh, I want another section that's 3 columns. Okay, now I've got 3 columns in this section. What do I want to put in them? So for each one of them, I can go and add, and these are the controls that you can put in. So I can put in an image, a video, like a YouTube video, an iframe to something else somewhere else, forms, we'll do claim forms just now, a Power BI dashboard, whatever it might be, or just plain old text. I just want to put text inside of this, or a button. Cool. So now I can just go and start adding some text. This is my news page. How cool. No. That's not how you write text. No, because also what appeared was another CoPilot button. So what I can do is I can describe what I want it to create, and it'll create the text for me. You know, create me a nice, cool tagline explaining what this page is about. Then I can say, make it shorter, make it longer, change the tone. But I don't want you to do that. I want you to, manually just come and type in all the text. Okay, so I can put in a YouTube video, a link to Microsoft Stream. I can go and build out this page, and I can keep going, adding more sections, and I can make it look really cool. What do you think so far? Pretty cool. Yeah, make a cool looking website. And what? How does it play with SharePoint? No. No, there's no SharePoint here. No, we're not talking about SharePoint. We're talking about PowerPages. No, it doesn't play with SharePoint. No, I'm lying. So no, they are friends. They are friends. So there are scenarios, for example, documents. When someone uploads a document, maybe I want it to go into SharePoint. So there are a few scenarios that you might want to show some SharePoint content here. So there is scenarios for that. But yeah. Make sense? Okay, cool. Happy days. So I'm building my site. I think it's cool, but I need to actually preview what it's going to look like before it goes live, right? So, and if I click preview, I can preview it on a mobile phone. So I just take my mobile phone, I put in the QR code, and it'll open on my mobile phone. Now I'll see what it looks like on my mobile phone. Pretty easy. Or I can choose desktop. So it opens another tab. You'll see the URL that it generated for me. You can bring your own, as I mentioned earlier, on contoso.com or whatever you are. Now, what's very important, the preview button doesn't just open it in a new tab. What it actually does is it clears the cache. So if I'm making changes in PowerPages, I can't just have another tab open and go there and refresh. I won't see my changes. So you have to hit preview each time, otherwise you don't see your changes because it clears the cache. Okay, so that's a very important thing. In the old days, and it's still there, you had to go to / blah, 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 / blah, blah, and there was like the secret URL, and you'd go there and that would clear the cache. You don't have to do that anymore. You just click preview. Okay. There's my menu with my sub pages, my news page, my home page. My site is awesome. Happy days? Okay, let's go. And where should we pop this? Let's add a new section, a one column section. And you can change the layout of your columns later on. You can select the objects, change, I want this now to be 2 columns instead of 1 column. You can adjust the width of your columns. There's lots of settings you can go and change to change it. And what I want to do is I want to put in a form for someone to fill in their claim. You know, it's maybe you're an insurance company, someone's had an accident, they need to be able to fill in a claim. So essentially what I want is a form. Happy days? Let's fill in a form. Oh man, CoPilot. It's so cool. Describe the form and we'll create it. Okay, but I'm not going to do that. We're going to do it manually. Okay, so let's just pop down here. So I want a new form, so I'm going to click new form. And it's saying, okay, where's the data going to be stored? So I need a table, a table called claims maybe. So guess what? I've already gone into the Dataverse, and I've gone to tables, and I created a claim table. And in the table, I created a few columns, a claim comment, the claim type, first name, last name, and a few other fields. That's all I've done. Happy days?
Did you have to create a form there, or you just?
I've just created a table. So I went into the Dataverse, I said new table, and then in the table, I created the columns that I want for my claim. That's all I've done. Okay.
So no changes to the forms or views?
I've done nothing at this point, just created the table. Okay, so now I need to choose the table. So I'm going to choose my claim table. There it is. No, there's no connection string. There's no connection string because this PowerPages site is in the same environment as my Dataverse. So important points I forgot to mention. PowerPages uses the Dataverse extensively. Okay, everything I do in here is actually in the Dataverse. So when I create a new page, where's that page actually? It's in the Dataverse. So everything is in the same Dataverse that's in this environment. So it's just looking at the Dataverse, and I have a claims table. So I don't need to set up any connection strings or anything like that. So the question for everyone online is, can you use other data sources? Yes. Kind of. Yes. So PowerPages is built on the Dataverse. It just is. Okay, so when I do this stuff, I'm going to show you later on that I'm not lying to you because I'm actually going to open up the Dataverse and I'm going to show you all this stuff. But we've got this cool designer here that hides it all from you. So remember ADX Studio from 2010? This nice designer didn't exist. You had to go into the Dataverse, and you had to manually do it there. But anyway, that's a sidebar things. And what's happened over the last few months and years is this designer is just getting better and better, so you never have to go into the Dataverse to do stuff. But there are a few things, which I'll show you just now, that you have to still go in there for. But anyway, my claims table. In Dataverse, there's something called a virtual table. A virtual table is a table that's not in Dataverse, but it looks like it's in Dataverse. It smells, it tastes exactly like it's a table in Dataverse, but it's not in Dataverse. You'll go into Dataverse, you'll see this table there called claim. It's not in Dataverse. It's in SQL. Or it's in a SharePoint list, which will make you excited. So you can, so that's called a virtual table, and it will work with virtual tables. I think virtual tables in PowerPage is actually still in preview, but it is there. And so what that means is I can go and choose a table now, and it's actually a table somewhere else. And what's cool with virtual tables is you can create joins between, let's say my customer table is in Dataverse, but my claims table is in SQL. I can actually create a join between them because my claim is associated to a customer. So I don't have to replicate data from my claims database into the Dataverse. It's actually just in there. So now when I come to PowerPages and I add a claim, it's actually going into my SQL table. Does that answer your question? Good. I didn't even wait for you to say yes. Okay, so now it's saying, okay, cool, that's cool, that's cool, that's cool. Select a form. Select a form. Select a form. So I drop this down. There's only one form. It's called information. Let me just choose that. Let me go back to the Dataverse. When you build tables in the database, there's something called forms. And these are for model-driven apps. So when I go here, there's a main form called information. Edit it in a new tab. So if I was going to create a model-driven app, and I wanted people to add claims or view the existing claim or whatever it might be, I will use this designer. And just so that you know I'm not lying to you, the URL is make.powerapps.com. So I'm creating a model-driven form. And on my model-driven form right now is nothing. Let's move that out there. I don't like it down there. All I've got is name. But I should probably, I'm going to hide the name column. I'm going to add the claim type. I'm going to add claim comment. I'm going to add first name. I'm going to add last name, policy number, and urgent. Happy days? So I've just changed a model-driven form, not a PowerPages form. But PowerPages uses the model-driven form. So what it's going to do is this is how it's going to show it in my website. So if I go back to PowerPages, it asked for a form. Well, I only have one form called information. I can go and add new forms. Often when I create forms, and I know it's not for the model-driven app, but it's for PowerPages, I actually put the name web form in the name. So I won't call it information, I'll call it claim web form. That's what I'll call it when I build it in the model-driven scenario here. So when I go and create a new form here or save a copy, I'll have the name web form associated to it. So I know that when I'm here, I know which one to choose. Okay. Soon, this type of stuff will be hidden from you. You wouldn't have to know this because the design is getting better and better, but this is how it is for now. Cool, so that's happy. No, I don't want to answer your question.
Name your copy of the selected form. So it's making a copy of that.
No, it's not making a copy. This is the confusing thing. We also have this term called form in PowerPages. Okay, you get a single step form and you get a multi-step form. Single step, I fill it in once and I click OK, data's saved. Multi-step is like a wizard. So this is the name of what form am I creating? So I'm going to call it just information desk basic form just so that you'll see the difference later on. So this is kind of like the metadata that describes that it should actually use that form. So this is, and then in here you can go and specify stuff like what happens once someone creates a record? Or is this a read-only form? So I'm using this to view the status of a claim rather than add a claim. Okay. Or what should happen when we actually click submit? So when I add a record, should it just display a record saying, thank you, a message saying, thanks, you've added it? Or should it redirect to another page in my site? And then on the query string, pass in the identity of this current record that I've just created, so that on that page I can display something based on what was created. Or don't pass a query string, just redirect somewhere else. Or redirect to another URL that's not even on our site. It goes somewhere else. So we'll just display a message. Your details have, your claim has been submitted. And then hide the form. Capture. So you know that, I think you all know capture. I don't have to describe it. But certainly if you're having a form that people are allowed to fill in and you don't require sign-in to get there, so anonymous, then it's probably a good idea to put a capture. Otherwise, you might just get bombarded by bots filling it in. And so you can choose. You can say anonymous users have to fill it in, but authenticated users don't have to fill it in. And do you want attachments? Do you want people to upload? So I'm applying for a job. I need to upload my CV. Okay, so do you want to allow people to upload stuff? There are other ways of doing this. In actual fact, the file data column in the Dataverse, if you go into the Dataverse and you add a file data column, if you just do that and add it to a form, it will show up as a button that someone can upload a CV. So create a column. So here I can create a column called evidence. And then in the form, there'll be a button for them to upload evidence associated to their claim. Brilliant question. So the question for those online, so once they've submitted it, maybe I want to send an email telling somebody that the claim's been submitted and thank them for submitting it and give them their reference number. Yes, Power Automate. Okay, so what you would typically do in this scenario, well, this is the way I would do it, is I would create a Power Automate flow and the trigger is on new record added to that Dataverse table. Okay, so it's not actually PowerPages. It's the fact that a new record's been added to that table. Off goes the flow, which sends the email, asks for approval, takes. Now, what's actually happening here is behind the scenes, one of the columns is an auto number. Take the auto number, send it to them as a reference. That's the way I would do it. The benefit of that is that if someone adds a claim through the model-driven app or the Canvas app that are all using the same table, the same email goes because it's off the table rather than in the app. But there is a new feature that's in PowerPages where you can put a button and the action of the button is to trigger a flow. Just like in PowerApps, you can do that. You can have an action off a button to trigger a flow. Okay, there we go. What do you think? Easy peasy lemon squeezy. If I go to my site now and I refresh, it won't be there. Why? Because I have to preview. It needs to reload the cache, and then it'll be there. Come on! What? I don't have permissions to fill in the form. I don't have permissions to fill in the form. Okay, so introducing permissions. When you grant permissions to a table, you can give it to different what they call web roles. Okay, web role. It's not the same as other roles inside of the Dataverse. And so what you can do is you can say, okay, well, who's allowed to write to this table? At the moment, anonymous is not allowed to write to this table, and therefore I don't have permissions. If I sign in, however, watch this all go up in smoke. If I sign in, I'm going to use Azure AD to sign in. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Especially stuff like just a simple feedback form, contact us form. Anonymous should be able to fill that in. Yeah. I'll show you now. What? I still don't have permissions because I haven't defined the web roles that are allowed to see this table, even though I'm signed in. Okay, so let's just go and correct this. does tell me, set the permissions on this form so it can be seen and used. And then I can click the new permissions button. This is one way to get here. The other way to get here is if you go into the left-hand nav, is it under data? So I said I was going to come back to this view earlier on. So this is a new little navigation item that they've put into the product. So I actually don't have to go into the traditional kind of Dataverse view to create tables and manage forms like I did earlier on. I can actually do it directly in the PowerPages UI. So directly from here, I can go and create a table. Directly from here, I can create the new columns. Okay, but that's actually what it's doing, is it's putting it into the Dataverse. The other thing that's pretty cool is you all know that when you build a Power App or a Power Automate flow, where should they go? Into a solution. They should go into a solution. What about PowerPages? I've just created a table. What solution is it going into? Oh, click that little cog button, specify the solution that this goes into. So I should have created a solution first. Okay. Do what I say, not what I do, eh? Something like that. Yeah, so, and here I can go and change that form, which I changed earlier on in terms of the display. So you'll see we're adding more and more into this UI, so you don't actually have to go into the designer. But this is not where I want it to be. I want it to be in permissions. Here we go, table permissions. So from here, I can create new permissions and give people, so this is the exact same slide out that you saw earlier on. And so what I can go and do is on that claim table, I can specify, I'm going to say everyone write claim. So this is just the name of this permission that I'm setting up. Ignore the spelling. And so what type of permission am I going to give? Well, they should be able to write records. They should be able to read records. Maybe you shouldn't be able to delete a claim. We'll do append and append to. There's a lot around append and append to. It's got to do with relationships between related tables. So sometimes you might not be able to write to table on the right normally, but you actually do in order for it to create a relationship between two records. So that's what append and append to kind of means. So I'm not going to explain that now, but another day. Those YouTube videos, he explains it well. Okay, but who? Who has this? Aha. Anonymous users can write, read, append. Authenticated users, administrators, and you can create roles. Okay, so I'm going to click save. This is also quite cool. There's this thing here called access type. So this is stuff like, okay, but which records? As a SharePoint person, in SharePoint, you can say, I only have permissions to the records I created, not others. That's what this type of thing is for. But it gets more sophisticated because it's got the concept in the Dataverse of organizations and individuals or contacts, accounts and contacts. And so what you can do is if you're like a B2B portal, you can say, this organization, I do business with Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola has these permissions. And therefore, anybody that signs in that has Coca-Cola as their organization gets those permissions. Okay, so Coca-Cola can see other Coca-Cola's records, even if somebody else created them. But if someone from Pepsi signed in, they would not see those. They would only see Pepsi records. But even though I've got 30 different Pepsi people signing in. Make sense? Yeah, so that drop down I didn't show you, but there's different options in that drop down. Yeah, the videos go into more detail on how to set that up. And guess what? I can now fill in my claim. There's lots of happy people. And there's no captcha because I'm signed in. Only anonymous people got the captcha. Okay. So I'm going to choose a claim type. This was a choice field, so it's no, not life. That's too complicated. Vehicle. I crashed my car. This is a very basic form. First name, it's required. Why? Because in the Dataverse, it's required. So it makes it required. and my surname, and my policy number, blah, blah, blah. And is this urgent? Of course it's urgent. Submit. Come on.
With the roles where you selected administrator and authenticated and anonymous users, can you have custom roles?
I've frozen. My immediate thought is yes, but I can't remember. Web roles, I'll show you in a second. Okay, so there we go, claim submitted. Happy days? Isn't that amazing? Yes. Okay, so that's cool. So I've submitted a claim. Where did it go? It's in the database. It's in the claims table. You believe me, I'm not going to show you. But, wouldn't it be cool if we did have a page that showed me the list of my claims? My claims. Oh, come on. Yeah, we will. Should I? My claims. I should make sure, for example, to go and set it so that this is only shown to authenticated users. And then I won't see this page unless I'm signed in. Then when I'm signed in, then it'll show on the navigation. But now instead of a form, which we just created, we're not going to do a multi-step form. A multi-step form is not super complicated to create. But basically, if you think that there's a lot of information to capture, then you're going to have steps in your form. And then you can define, what your titles of your steps are. Should the steps show on the left-hand side? Should they show on the top? And then only when you get right to the end, then you submit it. If you abandon midway and you come back later, you can carry on from where you left off. You don't have to build that type of logic. It just does it. So I'm not doing a multi-step form, but let's do a list. Okay, so which table do we want the list from? Okay, now which view, in other words, which columns should it show? In model-driven apps in the Dataverse, I can create views. And in a view, you can define which columns show in your list and also which records. So you can have filters, so same type of thing. And by default, there's always an active and an inactive. So I'll just choose active. I'm not going to go and do anything else. And then what can people do from the view? Well, let's just turn on, people can create a new record. When they create a new record, where do they go? What form do they go to? Well, they should go to that basic form I created earlier on. Remember? So let's have a display of new claim. How's that? How's everybody feeling? Are you wanting me to wrap up soon, or are you still okay? Okay, I'll go for another 10 minutes. On each row, do we allow them to view the details? So if they view details, well, then I've got to take them to another form or to another page somewhere else where there's all the details of the claim. I haven't created that yet, so I'm not going to turn that on. Actually, let's just do it. Let's just see what happens. Do we want them to allow to edit the record? Yes. Do we want them to be able to delete the record? So we'll just add it all. Come on. Da, 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 da. The view was a shocker view. It only had one column in it, so I should add some more columns into the view. But that's that auto number field that I had it generate. So there's a claim reference number there. I should probably have some other ones here. Then on here, I can go and view the details. I can edit it. I can create a new claim. Hey? Question. Or was that just da-da? Ah, da-da, da-da. Okay. Come along. Okay, so there's that one that I did earlier on. Pretty cool. I haven't written any code. Okay, there's a few, I've got 7 minutes that I'm just going to show you a few other little things here and there that I think you might find interesting. Okay, I said to you that this was actually all in the Dataverse behind the scenes. What happens is if you go into here into PowerPages, you've got this thing, this link here called Portal Management. This is like the old way of doing this all without the designer. So you would come into here and you would create a new page. And then you would come into here and you would create a basic form or a multi-step form. But a basic form, or a multi-step form used to be called advanced forms. So sometimes if you hear advanced form, it's what a multi-step form is. So you can see if I go to websites, here's the one that I've just been using. It's called the Meetup demo. If I go into that website, pages, and then it's got child pages, and it's got basic forms. We just created one. Can you remember the name of it? Information desk basic form. You've got multi-step forms. So it's all the stuff on the left-hand side. And if I go down here somewhere, I'll see web roles. So I can go and create web roles. So I can go and create web roles. So I can go and create web roles. Karika's lost me. Okay, so basic form. So this is pretty cool. Let me go to a basic form. So there's still stuff that you can do in here that you can't do through the designer. So sometimes, for example, that claim, maybe one of those isn't a drop-down box, but it's a lookup to another related table. And then what happens is it gives you this little search box there, and you click search and it pops up a window, and then I can search against this related table. But maybe I don't want that experience. I actually do want that as a drop-down. Or I don't want necessarily a radio button next to each other. I'd rather have a slider. Or when someone fills in the wrong information in the field, I want to display a custom error message. I want to change the way that that form works. This is where I do it. So you'll see there's a raft of form options that you can go and change. Some you can customize through the PowerPages designer, some not. So check out this. Specify custom CSS classes. Instructions. You want instructions to go on top of the form to tell the person what to fill in. This is where instructions go. So there's a lot of things. Basic form metadata is where you can go and change the behavior of some of those fields in the form. So for example, I'm just going to quickly jump into here. Basic form metadata. And I want to change one of the attributes, one of the columns. And I can go and choose which column. So let's take, I'm not going to have time to do this properly, but let's take last name. I want to change the way it works on that form. I want to change the label. I don't actually want it to be last name. I want it to be surname. And I can also do this for multilingual. So if you're needing to support multiple language, you can do this. And you can change the control that it renders as. So earlier on, I said sometimes you might want to change like a lookup column to be a drop-down box. Then you can come in here and change, the control that is being used, which it's not showing me because I think. Also, like pre-populating a field from another related table. Sometimes you don't even want to show a field, but you want a default value to be set. So that you can come and set here, what's the default value? You can do regular expression validation. Maybe I want an ID number validated, so I can put a regular expression to have it validated, or a South African telephone number. So this is where I go and do, I'm going to call it advanced customizations. Make sense? Okay. Last thing I want to show you, and then I'm going to call it quits, because you are all heroes. And that is, how do I change the top navigation or the header or the footer or the overall function? So through here, I can add sections, but okay, cool. I can click edit site header here. and I can change the logo. I can change a bit of styling. Yeah, but I want to change it like totally. Like it's generating navigation for me. That's awesome, but I want to change the way it generates navigation. How do I do that? I click Edit Code. And what it does is it opens up Visual Studio Code in the browser, and now I can just write HTML code and CSS and liquid templates and JavaScript. And actually, what's this doing behind the scenes? It's actually, this is all in the Dataverse. It's actually behind the scenes. It's querying the Dataverse. You don't see that happening. But there's actually like lots of snippets. I'll call them snippets of HTML. There's a snippet of HTML, which is the header. There's a snippet of HTML that's the footer. And you can specify for this site to use that header and that footer, but for this site to use that header and that footer. So you can change it up. But so you'll see here, there's actually something called header.html. And here is the header. And this is, if you're a JavaScript HTML developer, you're looking at this and you're like drooling. If you're not, you're like, I don't want to see this. But I guess it just depends where you are. You can just use it as is, or you can come in here and change this if you want to, or create your own footer and tell it to use this snippet as the footer. And so this, I've been talking about liquid. This is liquid. This is essentially server-side logic that gets executed. So for example, this is building a sitemap. Somewhere here, it's going to reference navigation, and it's going to be doing like a loop. It's going to say, okay, get the top level page, then get child page, then get child page, and then it's going to build out a ULLI list, an ordered list or an unordered list that's going to make up your navigation. And so, yeah, so you'll start doing this type of thing if you want to do this type of customization. And there's lots of objects that PowerPages gives you automatically. Like there's a page object, so I can say page.title will give me the current title of the current page. Or user.firstname will give me the first name of the user that's currently signed in. I can't remember if it's actually .firstname, but there's a user object, there's a page object. How do I know what they all are? You use the documentation. It's an amazing thing, this. And so in PowerPages documentation, it lists how to use liquid. It lists the objects that are there by default. And it also does advanced scenarios, in quotes advanced. It's not that advanced. Okay, maybe it's advanced. Where actually, you know that list I showed you earlier on, my claims? Maybe I don't want it to look like this at all. I want it to be a circle. I want it to be a pie chart, and it's got each claim in there. You know, something radical. I can't do that with a list. The list is pretty much going to look like this. I can change some styles, but I can use custom HTML for that. Okay, so then I create a little snippet, and I put the HTML in there, and then I use something called fetch XML or the Dataverse API to get the data out the Dataverse, and then use my HTML to render it in the way that I want to render it. Okay, so that's another thing that we start doing. This is just a sample one that I put on GitHub. I built it a while ago for the South African government departments where, stuff like applying for jobs is something called Z83, tenders, etc. So I put this together. But I do that quite a lot where we want to see the vacancies or the open tenders. I'm not necessarily actually using a list to show them. If I want to look at like the open tenders, which there are currently none open at the moment, I don't believe. But this is actually, there are currently no open tenders. But this is actually fetch XML inside a liquid tag that's rendering this. And this means then I have complete control of what I want the HTML to look like. I didn't have to do it for this. I just thought it would be cool. And I'll just finish off with one slide just to show you behind the scenes what that would look like. So that's this here. So this is fetch XML. It's essentially like a fetch statement that's looking against the job vacancies table. It's returning a whole bunch of columns, the title, the reference number, etc. It's doing a filter, so only show me the open job vacancies, not those that are closed, and order it by the application closing date. So that gives me fetch XML, and then underneath this, which I forgot to paste in, is actually the script that now, the liquid template that now basically loops through this and spits out your HTML to make up your table or your chart or whatever you want it to do. So this is, the other end of the scale. We started off, we built an entire solution without writing any code. But if you want to get extreme and totally customize the way it looks and feels, like that courses registration template, this is everywhere in that courses registration template. Okay, it's everywhere. This is one way to do it. This is essentially server-side. You can also use JavaScript, which calls the Dataverse API, and do it through web API REST calls, client-side, browser-side. That's another way to do it. One day we'll get onto that if you want to, but for now I'm going to stop because I know I've gone over. No, I haven't gone over. 0 to hero, how do you feel? Amped. Awesome. Any questions? Is there time for questions? Certain people I don't want to answer questions from.
Just be something to think about is, with this technology being so low code, is how we plan properly for it. So I'll leave it open to how you want to share that, but just how do you plan for the amounts of use cases that this could be used for?
What type of planning are you thinking about?
Things like capacity storage.
What?
Yeah, something.
You don't plan for that stuff.
No?
This is a SaaS solution. What do you have to plan for capacity and storage for? Look, I don't have a guide for planning. Look, there's probably if I prepared a nice top presentation, I could come up with lots of things, but I can't really answer it off the top of my head. What I will say, though, is you raise a very important point, that just because it is software as a service and I can just go there and I can just create it and I can just publish it, it doesn't mean there's certain things that I might have introduced that are really bad. I might have written JavaScript in there that opens up a security hole of note. I could have not set up permissions appropriately and accidentally given anonymous people access to see somebody else's records. So there are some, the way that you configure Azure AD B2C, maybe I've done something wrong there and it means I'm getting the wrong type of sign up or whatever it might be. So I think stuff like security reviews are still important with something like this, super important. Performance reviews and performance design, I think, is still important. Not as important as if you were building it yourself. You saw there's a new feature which never used to be there. We can just like tick a tick box and enable this on a CDN, which basically means a lot of if you've put custom JavaScript in here, you can bring in your own JavaScript libraries into here, images and those types of things. Those will be cached on CDNs. Good thing to do. Should I do it? When shouldn't I do it? So I think though there's architecturally still very important things that you have to plan for. Security through obscurity. Actually, an interesting one is the Z83 job application scenario. So initially when I created it, someone asked me to do it, and what they wanted is they wanted it to be completely anonymous. So you can apply for a job, you can fill in this full Z83 form, it's multi-step, it's complex. But you don't have to sign in to apply for a job, you can do it anonymously. Okay, cool. And then at the end, it gives you a reference number. Cool. And then they said, and we want people to go online and see the status of their application. Okay. That means they can submit it anonymously. That means to review, to see the application, they can sign in, but that's got no relevance. That means you have to be able to retrieve previous applications anonymously. What happens if someone guesses someone else's reference number? Then now you're exposing a full-on job application with serious PII in it. So that type of thing you have to be very, very careful of. Then the reference number must be a good. You cannot guess it. Or maybe, no. You have to sign in order to apply for a job. So yeah, but so that's all I can answer. But yeah, there's lots to consider. 100%. Yeah, yeah. And for those online, the comment was, like we've actually got legislation that means that you've got to put in effort to adhere to stuff like this, like Poppy. Yeah.
As a customer, then how do I get these goodies? What account should I have as a customer? E2, A3, E3 is
Oh, okay. So I should have started the whole session. Is the only thing I'm not covering today is licensing. I honestly it's a topic I do know a lot about, sadly. But I think suffice to say for now, I'll try and summarize it as simply as possible. It depends whether you're publishing it externally for like citizens or customers or business partners versus internally. If I'm publishing it externally, then typically it's a consumption model. In other words, you pay for it based on how many distinct, unique people use it in a month. Okay, so if I log in 50 times in a month, but it's just me, that's considered like one login. Okay, so and you buy it in batches of logins or visits. It's mostly like that. It's slightly different also because you can support the anonymous scenario where no one's logging in. So then it's kind of page views. But for the most part, just consider it's a consumption model. So it's based on how many people actually use the site. If no one uses the site, then your consumption is low. Internally, you can license it that way internally with some T's and C's. Okay, there's some T's and C's associated to licensing that way internally. Because in the past, the way it was designed is internally, you actually needed a PowerApps license to consume it. Okay, so for example, in the past, if you had the PowerApp per app license, that per app license would give you access to a PowerApp or a PowerPages site. So it was the same license, whether you used PowerPages or whether you used PowerApp. But there is a T&C scenario, which means that you can use it internally kind of like once. Does that make sense? So also, if your users already have PowerApps licenses, then you can create them PowerPages. Most of the time, and this is an interesting discussion, I've got something internal. Should I build it as PowerPages or should I build it as a PowerApp? And so, I mean, there's a technology decision there, but from a licensing perspective, the idea was that it was the same. It shouldn't be a license choice, if that makes sense. So, yeah. So E3, Office 365, E3, E5, E1, none of that counts. Okay, none of that counts for this. So you need you need a PowerApps premium license per user or per app license, or the consumption model. The consumption model you can buy in batches, or you can pay with Azure credit, and it consumes Azure credit behind the scenes. But yeah, E3, E5 doesn't give rights to PowerPages in any way, shape, or form. Yeah.
Any other questions? David, you had a comment.
It's a quick question. Now that we know how to build a Power Page manually, can you maybe show us an example of how CoPilot would do it?
Yes and no. So the CoPilot that showed up in my tenant allows me to create pages and forms and stuff, but it won't build the entire site for me. It's coming where it'll build the whole site for you. So let's do this.
Let's now see how PowerPages can help financial institutions to quickly create new websites that align with banks' branding and values, to have a modern online presence and effectively connect with the target audience. With this release, PowerPages empower makers to seamlessly create a website using generative AI. Just think it, describe it, PowerPages will build it. As a maker, you can use CoPilot to describe the website you want to build right from the homepage. Once you've entered your description, PowerPages will use generative AI to determine the sitemap, generate homepage layout variations, and the site theme. CoPilot has just generated 3 layouts based on your initial description. Now you can easily compare the designs, choose a layout, and then add the URL of the company. CoPilot would generate different variations of the color theme, and you can pick one that feels closer to the bank's brand. Next, CoPilot suggests the contextual pages to be added to the site, and once the necessary pages have been selected, CoPilot creates an entire site for the bank. You can now continue to use CoPilot inside the design studio to modify and refine the website. Next step is to create an application form to allow students to apply for a bank loan. With this release, CoPilot can help you build a multi-step form with the underlying table to collect responses. While on the homepage, use one of the starter prompts and provide input using natural language. CoPilot understands context and recommends a form with 4 steps. The form includes a summary step, and CoPilot automatically creates it. Now let's move forward and add an employment step to the form. CoPilot looks at the existing step sequence and generates an employment step. If you want to add a start date, all you have to do is ask for it. CoPilot will add fields to the form, as well as the underlying Dataverse column. Now you might want to add proof of income. As a result, an attachment is quickly enabled on the form. To learn more about the Power Platform 2023 Release Wave 2, we encourage you to review the entire release notes and try out the early access features for this release as they become available. Thank you.
I think what was more wow is I just happened to have that video at the right spot, just in case someone asked such a question. So yeah, the second half of that's available in the tenants now. So create a form, create a page, add content. But the first part where it actually created like the whole site initially, that's not there yet. It's still in preview. And if you do want to play with it, what you have to do is in the Power Platform Admin Center, you need to create an environment with the location of the US. Okay, so your whole tenant doesn't need to be in the US. It's just in the Power Platform Admin Center, like I went and I just created one which was of type trial, and I chose the US. And so now in that environment, I've got CoPilot in my PowerApps, and I've got CoPilot in Power Virtual Agent, and I've got CoPilot in PowerPages. So that's, yeah, that's what it's going to do, which is pretty like, it's pretty mind-blowing. Okay.
Thanks, Michael.
Thank you.
You're here.
You're very kind. You're very kind. Thank you for clapping.
Okay, so we are almost at 8 o'clock. I just want to check and see if there's any general questions or comments from anyone. Okay, perfect.
Michael, do you maybe want to explain a little bit more as to when you would use Canvas apps versus model-driven versus PowerPages? And how all of that would typically fit into a licensing SKU?
Okay. Yeah. Should we start with an easy one? We'll do the licensing first.
Happy.
No. I don't know the answer to that. There isn't an answer. So the Canvas app, model-driven app, PowerPage. When should you use what? Well, there's some things we know for sure. If it's external facing, PowerPages. Yes, you can do a Power App externally with Azure AD B2B. You have to sign into a Power App. You cannot get into a Power App anonymously. So if you've got an anonymous requirement, it has to be PowerPages. If you want someone to sign in with Facebook, Google, Twitter, has to be PowerPages. A Power App, you have to sign in with an Azure AD account, whether it's a guest account or a normal account, and it has to be assigned a license, otherwise it cannot use that Power App. So that's kind of easy in that scenario there. I'll give you another example. At Microsoft during COVID, we had to fill in every day a form to attest to our health. Did we have a temperature? You know, these types of things. You know, have I been in close proximity, etc. Now that could have been built as an internal Power App, or it could have been built as a PowerPage solution. It was built as a PowerPages solution. Why?
Look and feel.
Maybe it was look and feel because we've got HTML. We could just take our corporate identity from our public website, put it in. Maybe it was that. I don't know. Maybe. I also think, though, the plan was to open that up to our customers coming to the building as well. So if someone external also needed to fill it in to attest to get into the building, it wasn't limited just to internal people. So maybe they built it as that because actually external people also might have to access it. Pardon? Yes, and that's a good comment. The other one is, what skill set do you have? So if you're really good on PowerApps and it's for an internal application, use PowerApps. You know, like if that's what you know. But also be careful because I've seen solutions built in SharePoint that shouldn't be in SharePoint. You know, but I know SharePoint. Or I've seen stuff built in PowerApps that shouldn't be in PowerApps, but I know PowerApps. So you also do need to be a little bit careful of that. So it is good to be aware of PowerPages, go through a few hands-on labs and so that you know. Yeah, the other interesting thing about PowerApps is you've got access to the connectors directly in PowerApps. You know, the 1,000 connectors to SAP, to Oracle, to Salesforce, to, you know, all of them are direct add connector. In PowerPages, it's not like that. There's no connectors. It's Dataverse. It's Dataverse. And you can have virtual tables, and you can have flows, but there's no like just stock standard connector. So that is a slightly different model in terms of how that works. Does that make sense? I don't know if anyone else has got any other views. It seems like it's just me talking.
Yeah, I think there's a scenario where it's internal, and model-driven apps are not that easy to style, right? So if you have a model-driven app that looks the way that it looks, and you can create a custom page and all of that, but it's almost like PowerPages could potentially sit very nicely between Canvas apps and model-driven apps for internal scenarios. So when there's an application that visually you want it to be, you know, it's not functionality, it's not that heavy on functionality, but you want it to look cool, and you want to like have a WYSIWYG editor to create it. Or if you do a Canvas app, then there's a whole lot of stuff you need to build from the ground up that the PowerPage would just give you out of the box. So.
Yeah.
Just tell the guys online as well.
I'm just saying that David is giving me more ideas because I've got a project, and after this session, I have to rethink of how we're going to do it.
Yeah, I must say, because I can say, I love model-driven apps. I love them. I like them because I'm useless at building user interfaces. So when it comes to Canvas app versus model-driven app, exclude PowerPages for now. Like if I think it's an internal scenario that's very dataverse, because model-driven apps are primarily dataverse, and I want a lot of things in quotes for free. I need to be able to search. I need to be able to export. I need to be able to filter. I need to be able to visualize. I need to be able to email. I need to be able to run reports. I need security. I need this to work offline. I need it, like, it just comes with all this stuff. I don't have to build any of that stuff. Like, so like this scenario of the Z83 where I've got PowerPages to apply for a job. So my internal scenario is a model-driven app. So from here, this is where I can go and create the vacancies, the jobs. Then they just appear on the PowerPages site. So this is where I go and create the job. you know, internally there's maybe 5 people using this. It doesn't really matter what it looks like. It doesn't have to be sexy, but it must be functional and it must work. And I can just drag and drop. I don't have to think
Michael,
too much. Yeah.
how does the auditing work in the database? Like, does it keep like a proper track history of records changed? Let's say I have a rate table and there's a rate increase that happens on a yearly basis, but I want to keep a history of the previous rates. How does that handle that?
So the database is pretty cool with that. You just flick on a switch that says enable auditing. And then per column, you can choose whether that column is audited or not. And then what happens is automatically, every time the value in that column changes, it puts it into audit. Who changed it? What was the previous value? And what's the current value? So you'll see here now, and it's just there. I don't have to do anything. I just go here and I say audit history. It's just there. So on this particular record, which is a job application record, actually nothing's changed on it. It was created once. And I might have enabled history later. I can't remember. But anyway, so usually what would happen is you'd see the change date, who changed it, what was the type of change, what was the field, what was the old value, and what was the new value. So someone changed the score from 9 to 63 on this person's application. Who was it? It was system administrator, that naughty person. So yeah, that's the way it works. You just turn it on. Yeah, it doesn't matter how you use Dataverse, whether it's PowerPages, API, PowerApp, model-driven app. It's a Dataverse thing. Yeah.
Sorry, just on that second part of your question. So if you want to keep an old version of it, that doesn't really do that. So you can't roll back, you know, as far as I'm aware, from the audit logs. So it's almost like you can view it, but if you really want a true copy of the previous pricing table or records or whatever, then just create a new record of that. And yeah, so you have, and I'll create 2 records or whatever the case may be. Yeah, so you have a header record, a parent, that'll be your pricing, and the new entries would be children to that.
Great. Any other
Last point on model-driven versus Canvas. And then there's the choice of combining them. So the long-term view is you won't choose between a model and a canvas. It's all just the same thing. You just build an app. It's just whether do you want this left navigation, do you want this UI kind of like to help you in your app by default? And already now, I can go into a mod, there's a model-driven app, but I can add canvas pages. And I can add buttons that pop up canvas screens. So I also do that quite a lot, where I've got a model-driven app and maybe that summarizes something, and then it has a pop-up, and then that's a summary screen. It's a canvas screen, and then I'm calling out to Azure OpenAI to do a summary of all the record data and show it. You know, or I've got a left-hand nav. I click it here, and then in here opens a canvas screen. Okay, well, go to a tab, and then one of the little widgets is a canvas. So you can actually join, you know, have a combination of both. Also that you basically don't have to write code, because in the old days in model-driven apps, you'd write JavaScript to do that. So now you just use Canvas in there.
This might be off the subject, but on the auditing, can't you use Microsoft PowerView to force it to audit it?
That's a great question. It's a great question. And I'm not sure what I'm supposed to say. It's coming. Yeah, it's coming. I don't know all the details about it. It might even be there already. I'm not an expert on Dataverse and Purview, but I know that there is something. I was just going to open up the roadmap quick and see what's in there. But you'll see, like if I go to Dataverse, in the latest one, I want to see what's documented and what's not documented. Yeah, but I know there's something happening. There's something happening in that space. Oh, there we go. Yeah. Yes, yes. Monitor and protect data with Microsoft Purview. Yeah.
So like you said, it's coming. It's just around the
Yeah.
corner.
I'm sure I've heard that. I'm like, but was that something I'm not allowed to say? I don't know. Phew. Yeah, so there's. Cool. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks everyone for being here tonight. Hope you found it entertaining and useful. Just as usual, if any of you want to present at any of these meetups, please let us know. We're really open to anything and everything. Share what you've learned, even if it's just to practice presenting and that. As you see, it's a nice safe space for us to speak out. Better inside here than you're presenting in a meeting and you mess up over here, you mess up, it's fine. So really use this to hone your skills, share your knowledge. We all appreciate it. Yeah. With that, everyone, have a fantastic evening. Enjoy Women's Day tomorrow. Happy Women's Day, ladies. Enjoy the day off. Cheers all.